They're rustling in the bushes over there. See, our minds are naturally tuned to suss out danger. And that's really the thing we have to overcome. I'm at French Creek Recreation Site, which is about 40 kilometers from the Yukon border on Highway 37 in British Columbia. I'm a long way from everybody. Well, not exactly. There are some other people camping here. But this is about as remote as you're going to get. This is about as remote as you're going to get on a motorcycle camping trip. And people always ask me about fear. So I wanted to talk in this video about 3 things that I face as fear and how I deal with it. So I'd call this the ABC of fear. So the first A is animals, the B is breakdowns, and the C is crazy people. Right? Those are the 3 things that I feel like I could be afraid of out here in the bush. In fact, to be honest, I am afraid. I do have fear, but it's overcoming fear is the important part. Let's talk about the animals. In British Columbia, your main danger is bears. And I did a whole video on bears. You can check that out. But I want to talk about that again. On my day today, I saw at least 4 bears. So I know they're active. I just rode my bike from Whitehorse, Yukon, down here on my way back down towards home. And there's a lot of wildlife out there. Took photographs of moose. I saw a fox on the road that I didn't get a photo of. And that's one of the reasons what's great about traveling on a motorcycle is you get to pull over, you see things, you get to stop. It's much more, you're in the environment more than people who are traveling in cars. But, and I'm camping here, and I'm also aware that bears are out there, and bears are dangerous animals. So what am I doing about that? Well, the first thing is I got to keep a clean campsite, right? So I've just had dinner. I washed my dishes and I put the dirty water in the river so it's carried away. You got to be really careful about attractants, right? Like consider how sensitive a bear's smelling is. A bear can smell grubs in a rotting log, right? A bear can smell food at a long distance, and that's the only thing they do for the whole summer is try to eat as many calories as possible. So don't underestimate a bear's willingness or ability to find food. However, and we have to eat too, so I've eaten my dinner, I've washed my dishes, I've got some oatmeal that's packed there. I don't carry a lot of food with me, so I don't worry too much, but food smell gets on things. At the campground I was at about a week ago, there was a sign on the table that said you should eat in one set of clothes and sleep in a different outfit. Don't sleep in your eating clothes. That's a luxury that motorcycle campers can't really afford. I don't have a different set of clothes. I got the same set of clothes for several days. I was lucky. I was at the Yukon motorcycle campground last night. I did a whole laundry, but we're not changing our clothes twice a day or every time we eat. So I can't do everything, but I can keep the food away from my tent. I have one side has got my clothes in it and the other side has my food in it. So I always keep my food and my clothes separately, keep my food and clothes as separate as possible. And then as soon as I eat, I clean stuff up and I get rid of anything that smells for food. At the campground that I was at a week ago, so there's the washrooms, and the garbage is typically close to the washrooms. But if you're worried about bears, you want to camp as far away from the garbage as you can, because this is where the bears are going to be attracted to. Also, that's why the pump is over here at the very end of the campground, because that's where you wash your dishes And that's going to have the smell of food on it too. Okay. One of the great things about being at a wreck site is that there's no garbage. There's not supposed to be any garbage. There's no garbage pickup, so there's no garbage can to attract bears. And if people are responsible, they just take their garbage with them, so I had a can of stew for dinner. I washed the can. It's as clean as I can make it. And I've packed it up with my food, and it's going to go with me to go in a garbage can somewhere. Sometimes people put food in the fire pit, which is a really terrible thing to do. So keeping a clean campsite is super important, and that will not provide attractants to bears. Now, I do have bear spray. It's not the best thing for camping. The truth is that campers are not at risk. People who have difficulty with bears, look, there's a Wikipedia page that lists all the bear fatalities in North America, and it goes back to like 1980 or even earlier. And if you look at that, I've got the statistics, so I'll put some statistics up for you, that campers are not totally immune, but campers are not common. The most common problem with bears is hikers. Hikers come across bears that have cubs, and they come across bears that have a kill or some other food source. And so a bear defending its food is dangerous, and a bear defending its cubs is dangerous. But bears coming into campgrounds and going after people is one of the less common ways that people get into trouble with bears. It's not like it never happens, but it's not so common. Hikers and workers, people who have to move around in the bush, those are the most common. So we're already beating the odds just by being motorcyclists. But I do have my bear spray, and I will sleep with it. And this is like a last, I know some people are going to say that's really like not very useful. It's a last ditch, right? The bear spray is to be used when the bear is attacking you. And I've never used my bear spray in all the years that I've been hiking and sleeping in the bush because I've never been attacked by a bear. There are other dangerous animals in North America. I have a bigger fear of snakes. So, there's a lot of places where there are poisonous snakes. There's none in British Columbia, but, there are rattlesnakes. Well, there are rattlesnakes in British Columbia, but in a very limited area. But again, simple precaution. I went to Australia and went hiking with people from Australia, and I just thought about snakes all the time. And they just have some simple rules about, being careful about going into, if you can't see where you're stepping, if there's bushes, stuff like that, you just have to have some awareness of what the risks are. So I'm not going to talk about that, but, just checking your boots and shoes before you put them on if they've been out overnight. There are scorpions in some places. There are other kinds of dangerous animals. So, look at there's so many people out there hiking and camping that there's no reason to not do it because you're afraid of the animals. Every single place where people go camping, there's a risk of some kind of animal encounter, and mostly it's overblown in our minds. So animals, not a big deal. The B of the fear is breakdowns. And again, breakdowns can happen to anybody, but they're less likely. Breakdowns are less likely if you take common precautions. I serviced my bike before I came on this trip. I changed the oil. I went over everything. I even changed the tires because the tires that I had weren't young enough to handle a 6,000 kilometer trip. The thing is that things can happen. I have a limited amount of mechanical skill, so I'm not going to be able to solve every possible breakdown problem. But I do have, if I need help, I have my Garmin InReach, so I can always communicate. And, worst case scenario, it would cost me $1,000 to get towed out of here if I needed to, but that's something that I might have to do if things broke down. I have enough tools that I can do basic maintenance. I can maintain my chain and I can do some things like that. I have a little jump starter, so I can jump start the bike, because that's the most common problem I've had with a bike, is that it wouldn't start. You know, if you're riding an older bike, then you really need to have the skills to manage that bike. Those are basic things. I mean, even if you're on the road and you have the tire plug kit and you don't know how to use it, a motorcyclist will stop. I'm stopping for taking photographs, and people are stopping and saying, "Are you okay?" when they see me stop at the side of the road. So motorcyclists tend to take care of each other. So breakdowns, we can handle that. And the C is crazy people. And I know that, especially for women, there are people out there who may or may not be safe to be around. And when you're alone, you want to avoid them. But women do camp by themselves. Again, at the last campsite where I was at about a week ago, there was a woman all by herself at the next site. And so I didn't bother her because I'm not that kind of person. So the best thing to do, don't go chatting up women in campgrounds. That's all I can tell you. Treat other campers with respect. Doesn't mean you can't say hello as you walk by. In case there's somebody who's really dangerous, like the real crazy people, you know, you gotta just try to avoid them, right? And listen to your spidey sense. And if things look bad, go somewhere else. You know, come in, scope the place out. I like to go around the campground and take a look and see what's going on. And I've been in campgrounds where there's been people who kind of made me nervous, but mostly they just want to be left alone too. The thing that bothers me is people who like to have loud music, and that can happen. But you just leave them alone, and worst case scenarios, you got to go somewhere else. When I pulled into this campground, there's some people who are over there. I could tell they were touristy types. They had a trailer. You know, I want to say two older couples, but I'm probably at least as old as them. So, you know, some senior citizens who are traveling in their RV and enjoying a more remote site, and that's great. For both animals and people, if you go to a more developed site, like a provincial or state park, you're going to have a safer experience, because there's at least somebody in charge of making sure there's no problem bears around. There's somebody in charge of maintaining order in the camp. There's somebody who is, you could possibly call on for help. There's lots of times then they just come around and collect a fee and disappear. But there's a set of rules and expectations, and things are usually more orderly in state and provincial parks. So if you're new to moto camping, then the best place to start is at something like that. My second night on this trip, I was at a private campground, and again, there's a homeowner who lives there, and it's kind of on their property, and so they keep a really tight leash on what people are doing there. And if you really wanted to feel safe, you would be camping in a site like that where there's somebody actually living on the property. Lots of campgrounds have paid hosts, and their job is to make sure that things are managed. So if there's somebody of authority in a campground, you know you're going to be safer. So I highly encourage you to consider moto camping and overcoming your fears. If we really knew the danger, right, we wouldn't be crossing the street. There's danger all around us that we don't worry about, right? We get on a motorcycle and travel for 600 or 700 kilometers or 500 miles in a day, and then say, I'm worried about camping. We've already overcome the danger. The danger was being on the motorcycle. The danger is traveling in a car. The danger is walking around in the city. So we know, we understand those dangers, and that decreases the risk. So all I'm saying is, with moto camping and camping in remote places, understanding the danger and understanding the risk makes it much more comfortable. So starting small by going to state or provincial campgrounds and working your way up to more remote places is the way to go. I hope you enjoyed this video. I am on a trip. I'm on a 6,000 kilometer trip to the Yukon and Alaska. I'm on my way home now. I joined the Fuzzy Biker for part of that trip, and I'm making videos on different segments of my trip. Thanks for watching. My name's Peter. I like motorcycles and motorcycle camping, so I forgot to say that at the beginning. Thanks for watching.